Imagine this: a dark, cold night, a raging snowstorm all around, and a chairlift hanging mid-air that suddenly stops. Below lies the ground covered in snow, and three exhausted, starving people. Now, in this battle for survival, they have only each other to rely on, and the shadow of fear surrounding them. The story begins with three friends: Dan, Lynch, and Parker, who is Dan's girlfriend. They've come skiing to escape the troubles of their lives for a while. To ski, they need to reach the top of the mountain, and there's only one way to get there: the chairlift. The ticket for the chairlift costs $50 per person, but they have only $100 in total. Then Dan says, "Parker, if you talk to the ticket checker, maybe he'll let us go for $100. Parker gets annoyed and says, "How can you even think he'll agree for $100? Dan laughs and says, "You're a girl. That's an advantage you should use." Eventually, Parker is forced to agree with the boys. Actually, the ticket checker was a bit of a sleazy guy. When Parker speaks to him sweetly, he allows all three of them to ride for just $100. Dan's plan works, and the three of them sit on the chair, heading toward the mountain peak with excitement for skiing. They're thrilled, their hair blowing in the wind, laughing and joking around. Suddenly, the chairlift stops. The tourists below start cursing at the resort staff. Meanwhile, Lynch jokingly tries to scare Parker. What if the chairlift falls? Parker gets genuinely scared. Then Dan calms her down and says, "Nothing like that will happen. Relax." After a while, the lift starts moving again. When they reach the top of the mountain, all three become even more excited. Lynch gives Parker some basic skiing instructions since it's her first time skiing. Then they enjoy themselves to the fullest, skiing all day and return before evening. At night, they go to a hotel for dinner. During dinner, they suddenly feel like skiing again, but this time at night. Lynch says at night there are fewer people, so we can ski faster. It'll be twice as fun. Everyone agrees, and they set out to ski once more. When they reach the chairlift area, the ticket checker is preparing to close everything down. When they ask to ski, the checker says, "A storm is coming tonight. I need to shut everything down and leave early." But the three plead with him, saying, "We'll be back very soon. Please let us go. The resort will be closed for a week after this anyway." Finally, the checker agrees on the condition that they come back quickly and lets them sit on the chairlift. Just after they move a little distance, the checker's coworker arrives and says, "The boss is calling you about next week's duty schedule." The checker gets angry and says, "I told him my brother's bachelor party is next week. How can he cancel my leave now?" His coworker says, "You should go talk to him yourself." While leaving, the checker says, "A while ago, 3 people went skiing. Don't shut anything down until they're back." Meanwhile, the 3 friends are going up the mountain, and below they see 3 people skiing down. They think there are more people skiing, so their excitement grows even more. But they didn't know that this excitement was about to turn into the most terrifying nightmare of their lives. Actually, the 3 people they saw skiing below. When all 3 of them arrive at the entrance point while skiing, the new ticket checker assumes that the 3 people his colleague mentioned have already returned, and thus he shuts down the chairlift. When the chairlift suddenly stops, Lynch becomes furious at the management. He says it's freezing up here, and if this is some kind of joke, then it's a really bad one. But by then, the ticket checker has already left. Dan is getting very bored and keeps talking either about death or telling jokes, but none of them realize that they themselves are trapped in the jaws of death. They have been talking for quite a while. Parker says that by now, the lift should have started again. Dan tries to calm her, saying they'll probably restart it soon. Suddenly, all the lights go out, and everything around them is engulfed in silence and darkness. The 3 of them start to panic, and Lynch begins to shout loudly. Parker becomes extremely anxious and says today is Sunday, and the resort is supposed to close today and reopen again on Friday. Dan, who is also scared, gets angry at Parker, saying they can't just do this. We'll definitely get back and complain to that ticket checker. But they have no idea that they are actually trapped here, and no one is coming to help them. They've already been stuck up there for the past 2 hours, and now the weather begins to worsen. Suddenly, a heavy snowstorm begins. The snow hits their faces like needles, and enduring it is almost impossible. They have no choice but to scream for help. As time passes, their fear grows stronger and stronger. After a while, a large snowcat vehicle appears. Seeing it, they think it has come to rescue them. The three of them start shouting loudly, calling for help. But because of the enclosed cabin and the sound of the engine, the driver cannot hear their voices. In reality, he has come to pick up his colleague from the mountaintop. Meanwhile, he receives a message from the resort saying, "Your colleague returned quite a while ago, so you need to come back immediately, as the entire resort is closing due to the weather." As the driver reverses the vehicle, Dan and his friends throw their glasses and other belongings toward it. But since the driver's face is turned backward while reversing, he fails to see any of the objects being thrown from above. Lynch, Parker, and Dan keep calling out to him desperately. But without seeing or hearing them, the driver drives away. Now the three of them are even more hopeless than before. They have neither food nor a phone to contact anyone for help. Trying to distract himself from the terror, Lynch tells his friends to name their favorite vegetables. But Parker and Dan are terrified, and Parker tells them to be quiet. Dan then says that to get out of here, one of them will have to jump. But they are hanging at such a height that none of them dares to make the jump. The cold is unbearable, and Parker's face is beginning to turn red. Frostbite is setting in from the freezing temperatures. Dan now becomes certain that no one is coming to help them, so he decides to jump. Lynch stops him and says they should wait until morning. To this, Dan tells him, "When the resort itself won't open until next week, who will come to help us in the morning?" Parker also pleads with Dan, telling him not to jump. But Dan knows very well that they're trapped badly, and if none of them takes the leap, they'll all freeze to death up there in the cold. Dan comforts his girlfriend, saying, "I'm going to get help. Until then, Lynch will take good care of you." Then Dan prepares himself to jump. As soon as he jumps, there's a horrifying sound of bones cracking. The icy ground is so hard that the impact causes Dan's leg bones to snap and protrude out of his skin. Seeing this, Dan screams in agony. He's now completely helpless, unable to move, and neither Lynch nor Parker can climb down to help him. Seeing Dan's condition, Parker and Lynch become even more terrified. Parker throws her muffler down to Dan so he can tie his legs, but it lands in the bushes, and Dan isn't capable of moving even slightly. Then Lynch throws his muffler, which falls close to Dan's legs. With great effort, Dan picks it up and tightly ties it around his injured legs. Parker says, "I'll throw my coat down to you so you don't freeze to death." But Dan refuses, knowing she'll freeze to death without it up there. Then Lynch comes up with an idea. He says, "I'll go along the cable to the next pole where the ladder is. Then I can climb down and help you." But as soon as Lynch stands up on his chair to reach the pole, his hands and feet begin to slip because of the frozen ice, making it impossible for him to move forward. Lynch tells Dan, "We'll have to break this ice first so we can help you." Meanwhile, suddenly a wolf appears below Dan, growling in front of him. Seeing the wolf, Dan begins to tremble. He has nothing to defend himself with. Lynch throws his keyboard down, and the noise scares the wolf away. Dan breathes a sigh of relief and urges Lynch to reach the pole quickly before the wolf comes back. As Lynch starts moving along the cable toward the pole, his gloves begin to tear apart, causing immense pain to his hands. He barely manages to move forward a little bit when he suddenly retreats because below, a whole pack of wolves has gathered, surrounding Dan from all sides. Dan shouts to Lynch, "No matter what happens, don't let Parker look down." And with that, the wolves pounce on Dan and start tearing him apart alive. Parker and Lynch are helpless. All they can do is cry. Dan is gone. The wolves devour him and then disappear into the snowy wilderness, leaving behind a chilling silence. Sitting above, Parker says to Lynch, "Why did you let Dan jump?" Lynch realizes she's blaming him for Dan's death. He replies, "He was my childhood friend. I tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen." In the silence of night, with freezing cold on one side and the terror of helplessness on the other, every moment becomes more unbearable. There's no one to hear their cries, and below, those ferocious wolves wait for them. The two of them can't get down in any way, and thus they spend the entire night stuck on the chairlift. When morning comes, we see both of them asleep. Their faces are covered with frost. Parker's hand has frozen completely to the safety bar. It's not easy for her to pull her hand away. When Parker finally tries with all her strength to free it, the skin of her hand rips off completely.
After enduring immense pain and struggle, she finally manages to free her hand, but on the other side, Parker's facial wound worsens even more, and Lynch tells her not to touch it. Now daylight has spread all around. Lynch calls out for help again, but apart from the two of them, there's no one else in sight. Half the day has already passed and the sunlight has grown intense, but still no human being is visible anywhere. The two of them, who have been sitting helplessly since last night, are still waiting for help. Parker blames herself, regretting why she didn't do anything to help Dan. Lynch consoles her, saying, "It's not your fault. We both tried to stop Dan, but maybe his death was written that way." After this, the two talk about Dan for a while. A little later, Lynch says to Parker, "If we die here, then Dan's sacrifice will go in vain." Lynch asks Parker to help him as he prepares to move toward the pole through the cable. Now, Lynch hangs on the cable, and the wolves are already below. His gloves are torn, yet he keeps moving forward because he knows if he doesn't reach the pole, they'll never get out of here. After struggling and enduring tremendous pain, he finally manages to reach the next chair. Lynch's hands are in great pain. He asks Parker to throw her ski stick toward him because he wants to use it to reach the nearby pole. But as Parker throws the stick, it falls before reaching him and drops down below. Now, Lynch has no other support except his own hands to reach the pole. He tries again, and with great difficulty and pain in his hands, finally succeeds in reaching the pole. Seeing this, Parker becomes overjoyed. Her hope of survival is rekindled. As Lynch climbs down the ladder from the pole, suddenly a wolf attacks him and starts tearing into him. His ski stick lies nearby. With great effort, Lynch picks it up and strikes the wolf, forcing it to run away. He then tells Parker, who is still trapped above, to stay where she is, assuring her that he'll soon come back to get her. As Lynch skis away, 5 hidden wolves start chasing him. The wind blows fiercely, and Parker sits alone waiting for Lynch to return. But Lynch still hasn't come back, even after a long time. The bolts and nuts on one side of the chairlift Parker is sitting on have now come loose. Night falls while she waits helplessly. When morning comes, she finds herself once again alone and hopeless because Lynch still hasn't returned with help. Parker realizes that Lynch too is never coming back. So now she decides to free herself from the chairlift. She can't travel along the cable to the pole because one of her gloves has fallen down. Therefore, she decides to hang from the chairlift and jump. As soon as she hangs from it, the nuts and bolts give way and the chair gets stuck halfway to the ground, hanging by a small cable. But that cable soon snaps. Because the fall distance is reduced, Parker doesn't get injured, but the chair lands directly on her legs, making it difficult for her to walk. Parker crawls and drags herself forward through the snow and soon encounters a pack of wild wolves tearing apart a human corpse. The dead body actually belongs to Lynch, and Parker realizes that he became a victim of the wolves, that's why he never returned. But the wolves don't attack Parker, and she quietly crawls past them. In this way, Parker escapes the jaws of death and finally reaches near the road. A car is passing by. She calls out for help, but the driver doesn't hear her and drives away. She drags herself a little closer to the road, and due to exhaustion and weakness, she faints there for a while. Soon, another car appears. Parker is now lying very close to the road, and this time, the driver notices her. The stranger stops, picks her up, and drives towards the hospital. And thus, the film comes to an end. If you liked today's story, please like and subscribe, and press the bell icon to watch more interesting stories like this.